Well, thank you, Scott, and thanks, Matt. And I think the first thing I want to do is just publicly express gratitude for all of the friends that we have at Zions Bank and for the wonderful support that they've given our family and our businesses over the years. They are without question one of, if not the most important relationships that we have. And my dad said many times when he was still with us that if it weren't for Zions Bank and their loyalty to us, we wouldn't be who and what we are today. So, Scott, thank you for that. As most of you know, my dad developed type 2 diabetes sometime in the 90s. Then he had a heart attack in June of 2008 and passed away in February of 2009. I became CEO of the family business almost 3 years ago. It was July 16th, 2008. And I got to tell you, it's been a great job. I've never enjoyed working more. And I've had a lot of really good jobs, and almost every job I've had I've been able to say that about. But this one is really a cool job, and I do love it, in spite of days when we have to trade our star point guard and we lose our long-tenured head coach, which are tough days. But but I do love my job. And what I'd like to do now is address some of the questions that were in the invitation that I received. And the first one is, are you similar to your father in running the businesses? And the answer is yes and no. I'd like to think that we're similar in terms of our commitment to protecting and growing the resource base and to facilitating opportunities for personal growth among our employees and partners, and for our commitment to excellence. But there are a lot of ways that we're very different. For example, my dad was a classic entrepreneur. Every single thing that happened in our organization eventually touched him. I'm far more collaborative and far more delegatory, if that's a word. I delegate a lot more than my dad does. And that has served us very well. And to me, I feel like we've been able to not only tap into the energy of so many wonderful people in our organization and extract more from them, but we also have a lot of good ideas that I believe were previously not necessarily invited to come to the surface. The other thing that I think is different about us is the structure of our schedules. I tend to probably overschedule myself and fill almost every minute of every day in advance, where my dad was very reluctant to let anybody pin him down on a schedule. He just wanted to be able to move quick and easy and do whatever he wanted and not be obligated. And so to me, what I've learned is that there's more than one way to run a business. And I want to make it very clear that I have enormous respect for my dad. The next question, how much pressure do you feel to build the business rather than to maintain the business? As I said, my dad built a wonderful, strong, healthy organization, and I believe because of the strength that it had when he died, it would be very hard to break it. My goal is to preserve the best of what he built and add to it when appropriate opportunities come along. And I believe that growth in a company or in a person is a natural outcome of proper management and sound decision making. What do I know now that I wish I knew before the transition? This is one that is a little emotional to me, but one of the things that I've learned looking back over the last 3 years is that the business is alive and well. It has survived my dad, the person who gave all to bring it to life and to nurture it and grow it. And what that's taught me is that he could have, if he chose to, had more balance in his life and spent more time with my mom, benefiting from all those years of hard work and sacrifice. One thing that I've learned from that is that there are very few issues that need to be dealt with right now. Certainly there are some, and they're big and they need to be dealt with when they need to be dealt with, but that to me is the rare minority of time. And most of the time, those dragons will be there waiting for us tomorrow after we go to our kids' ball game or our daughter's dance recital or whatever. And so I've tried to just pace myself and and not create circumstances where I find myself in that same situation. That is one of the few regrets that I have. What has been your approach during the general economic difficulties? The first thing we did was we tried to reduce and simplify, and I used the phrase, we need to identify what we do best and do more of it, which in the case of our family business is to sell cars and related products and services, and to sell, hopefully, quality entertainment experiences. Now, if it's all right, I'm going to take just a second and share some of the things that, that worked well. This is more along the lines of succession planning. During the time that I ran car dealerships, I was a general manager from 1997 until 2005. I ran Stockton de Malone Honda and Larry Miller Toyota in Murray. And during that time, my dad said to me on 3 different occasions, you running a car dealership is a luxury this family and this organization can't afford. And what I think he meant by that was, you got to quit goofing off doing that easy stuff and get up here with me and let me teach you the ropes of how to transition the power. And I really didn't want to do that because I had a really good thing going. I told you I love my jobs, and I really loved running that Toyota store in Murray. And so anyway, as was the case most often, my dad won the argument, and I wound up leaving that job and came up to work with him on August 17th, 2005, I think it was. And it finally got to the point where I just said, listen, Dad, this is your business. I respect that. I understand that. Whatever you want to happen is what will happen. No problem from me. But I've got certain things that are important to me that I need to do for my own well-being. And if you don't feel comfortable with my ability to manage, or you don't feel like there's room for me in your business, or you don't want me, I'm okay with any of it. All I want is for you to tell me, so then I can do my own thing, because I'm not getting any younger. And if I'm going to go take on a bunch of debt to start my own company or whatever, the sooner I start, the sooner I finish, and I'd like to get going. And so that was, to me, that was a very pivotal moment in my career, and I hope in my relationship with my dad. And at that point, I think the light went on for him, and he did give me some more meaningful assignments. Then the next thing that didn't work so well is when my dad was dying, he had the wisdom and foresight to help assemble a team that's called the advisory board. And I think my dad's intent was for that group of people to help keep me out of trouble and not mess up his life's work. So at that point, we were meeting on a weekly basis. And one of the things that was an issue, and bear in mind my dad was still in the hospital at the time, one of the things that was an issue was Real Salt Lake had just opened their stadium, and some of their patrons were parking at Jordan Commons, and that meant that our patrons didn't have any place to park, so it was not a good thing. So I asked Jay Francis to call Real folks and work out some kind of agreement where it would work for both of us, and whether I would be happy to lease some of our parking to them. So he did that, and in the next week he came, and as we do in those meetings, we're going around the table and everybody reports. And it just so happened that my dad and mom showed up for this meeting. My dad had been released from the hospital, and he showed up and pulled his wheelchair up to the table, and we started going around. And I can't remember who went first, but they did. And my dad had a few comments that he made, and then the second person went. And I'm trying to conduct the meeting from the head of the table. The second person went. My dad had a few comments, and then when it got to Jay reported on that with Real. And for those of you who understand my dad's relationship with Checkits, you'll see the humor in this. When Jay said, "Hey, I'm happy to report that we've got an agreement with Real Salt Lake," my dad looked at him and he said, "Screw those guys, we're not doing it," you know. And at that point, I pushed my chair back and I said, "It's your meeting." And to me, that was extremely frustrating because he had put me in charge. He made me the CEO. But then he still wanted to be the CEO. And I understand that. This is his life's work. These are his guys. He'd been locked up in a hospital bed for the last 2 months, and he was just happy to be out. So it was a delicate situation, but the lesson that I took away from that is that there can only be one person in charge. And it would be him. I would defer to him happily all day. But once I've got it, once I've got that mantle, let me run with it. And so any of you who are considering passing the mantle of authority to your successor, make sure you're ready for it. And when you do it, I would, for their benefit and yours, encourage you to let go. Get out of the way and let them do their thing. That's not to say you abandon them. It was nice for me to have my dad there as a sounding board if I needed him, but it was kind of complicated when we were both there trying to give direction. Things that worked well. My dad never gave us anything other than opportunity. Now, that's not to say that we ever went without, but he was not one to just lay it on thick and give us money and do that. He made us work for what we had. And he made sure that we all grew up knowing that there was to be no sense of entitlement. And that is very important, and I'm very thankful for that. And that, to me, is one of the things that we try now very hard to teach Miller 3.0, that they've got to be producing and adding to the equation in order to be worthy of the blessings that come to them. Then another thing that that is evidence of my dad's wisdom. January 4th, 2007, we had a meeting with my mom and dad and my 3 brothers and I in the executive conference room at Energy Solutions Arena. And to this day, we continue to meet as a family. And I think that one practice, more than anything else that we do as a family business, is responsible, or what makes it possible for us to get along so well. Because we take time to report to one another on what we've been doing. And I make a point in every meeting to ask all of them if there's anything they want to know about what I'm doing. Anything they've heard, anything I haven't covered, anything that doesn't feel right to them. And there is a really good chemistry among us. And I think, as I said, more than anything, it's because of that clear communication on a regular basis. The other thing that is a real blessing is that my dad always made it clear that when he wasn't going to be CEO, that I would be CEO. And I don't say that because I'm glad I became CEO. My point is that I'm glad he was the one to decide the fate of his life's work rather than him dying with that question unanswered and me and my brothers have to sort it out. And that was a real blessing to me that he defined that. If that's all the time we've got, let me just share a couple of closing thoughts. Relative to succession, if I could share some thoughts for your consideration. Number 1, define what you can while you can. You always have the opportunity to modify it, but the more you do now to define those things, the less speculation there's likely to be in your absence, the less bickering among family members, the less imposition of the government's will, and the more your life's work is going to be protected in the hands of people that you choose and love. And that's really it. So with that, I'll thank you for your time, and thank you, Scott, for having me.